Tui T. Sutherland's Wings of Fire is a very, very popular book series. It's made up of a total of 15 books, each of which is about 350 pages, as well as 2 side books, one of which is normal size and the other is long as hell, plus 4 short spin-offs called winglets. And yet, despite the stories being written faster than a Cheeto riding a motorcycle, they're consistently rated very well by tens of thousands of people, each one scoring about a 4.5 out of 5. And honestly, I have to agree, for content aimed at kids aged 10 to 15, they are good. This series is a friggin' masterclass for writing tween novels. And because of that fantastic writing, it's gathered a pretty substantial audience of older teen and adult fans. If you want to know about my personal book rankings, here we are. Anyway, I was thinking about the series just for fun a while ago, when I began to do what I inevitably do with all the fantasy media I like: overanalyze the world building. Normally for me, this is a bad move, since I end up noticing major holes in the logic of the stories or the setting. Whether it's Harry Potter, Pokemon, Game of Thrones, Percy Jackson, Star Wars, or pretty much anything else, the moment I start doing this, I begin enjoying the series less, but I can't stop myself. But this time, it didn't happen. In fact, the more I thought about the world building of Wings of Fire, the more I found myself realizing how fantastically written the series is. Normally when I start analyzing something, putting together the puzzle pieces, I realize they're from 2 entirely different boxes, and half the ones from each of those boxes don't even fit together with each other. But with Wings of Fire, everything works together perfectly. So, I wrote down my thoughts alongside a very quick intro to the series, and here we are. I'm not going to be able to cover everything in this video because it would be a lot to talk about. If you want to see that, give this video a like, share with a friend, subscribe, so I know that it's something you want to see more of. But I'll be covering the abilities and societies of every major tribe, as well as the magic system. Here we go. The known world of Wings of Fire is divided into 2 continents: Pyria, which will be the main subject of this video, and Pantala, which is cool but is complicated and would take too long to cover. They're both shaped like dragons because this is a kids series and that's fun. 5,000 years ago, humans were the dominant species, but at some point, a mysterious event called the Scorching took place, and dragons became the apex predator on the continents. All of the books, except for one, are written from the perspective of dragons, giving it a pretty unique premise to begin with. Dragonettes hatch from eggs, maturing quickly into full dragons at age 7, but then stick around for quite a long time, most having natural lifespans of over 100 years. They have a lot of variety in how they look and in the abilities their tribes have, but they're all part of the same species and can intermarry without any trouble. They live in a roughly medieval feudal society with monarchs ruling with absolute power. The dragons are divided into 10 tribes, 7 of which reside on Pyria. These are MudWings, SeaWings, RainWings, NightWings, SandWings, IceWings, and SkyWings. Each of these tribes controls a swath of land across the continent, with a central ruler at the head. The ruler is almost always female, since dragons are sort of reptiles and they're usually matriarchal. The tribes are in constant conflict with each other, but as of Book 1, that's been ramped up significantly after the sudden and unexpected death of Queen Oasis of the SandWings. Her 3 daughters started fighting for succession, and what began as a conflict in one tribe ended up as a complex continent-sized war. The world in the story is generally quite unfriendly, filled with societies based on authoritarianism, racism, and general jerkish behavior. It's known for being absurdly murderous for a children's series, with 12 on-screen deaths in Book 1 alone. Many times, it is a brutal, horrible place to live, with suffering, violence, and repression around every corner. And yet, the stories always manage to come out hopeful, with the world getting realistically better at the end of each arc. Now, let's get started with the first tribe, the MudWings. MudWings live in this little patch of swampy land between the SkyWings and the SeaWings. They're generally the biggest, with large flat snouts, being camouflaged in dirt and mud, breathe fire if they're warm, and hold their breath for an hour. Also, if they hatch from a blood red egg, like the main character of the first book, Clay, did, they have fireproof scales. Culturally, they're known for having very weak parental bonds, balanced out by very, very strong sibling bonds. Like snakes, their parents basically just drop them once they hatch, but when a clutch all hatches together, they're bonded for life, with the largest and strongest being the unofficial leader. They basically travel together in a little troop of 4 to 5 siblings, each covering for the other's weaknesses. However, this isn't set in stone, and orphan MudWings often form their own little groups for found family. This also means that, unlike every other tribe, no Mudwing queen has ever been challenged by your sister for the throne, since they're all so close with each other and they get along so well. They're generally the simplest and most straightforward of all the tribes, which is probably why there's only ever been one Mudwing protagonist, and it was Clay, the very first one. There's simply not as much to talk about. SeaWings are big, blue, and live in the ocean. Despite their land territory being pretty small, their real kingdom is underwater. SeaWings can't breathe fire since that would be useless under the ocean. Instead, they hunt using a powerful tail, which they use to wallop things like it's a big club. They also have gills and have these scales that they can light up so they can see underwater. They also have great night vision. The cool thing that Sutherland had to do with SeaWings is to figure out how a society could possibly exist underwater. For example, you can't really talk under the ocean, so how would people communicate? The easy way would be to say that they write out their messages or use sign language or just don't. Instead, Sutherland decided that they have their own language that only they can use, which is spoken by flashing the lights on their scales in certain patterns to communicate ideas. They have to write in a special ink and on waterproof paper if they want to write anything down. And they couldn't breathe fire for pretty obvious reasons, so they need night vision or some way of lighting things up. Plus, while the main governing fortified palace is deep underwater, they also have a smaller palace above sea level for any visitors or ambassadors. Everything checks out. RainWings live in a jungle in the southern part of the continent, secluded from the other tribes. They live an idyllic lifestyle, eating vegetarian food and with no concept of conflict or war, and barely any form of government whatsoever. They have the ability to camouflage by changing the color of their scales, and to spit deadly acid, although they never use it. They can sort of photosynthesize, and so they like to take naps in the sun. As of Book 1, the citizens of Pieria generally see dragons in a hierarchy something like this. RainWings are on the bottom, being inferior, weak, lazy, stupid, and animalistic. One step up are most of the other tribes, who are seen as being really weird and a bit backward, but ultimately pretty intelligent and formidable. The next tier on the ladder is the tribe that the dragon is from. They think they're superior, their lifestyle is better, they are more moral, they have a grander society. And the final tier is NightWings, who are generally considered to be an epic, almost godly species. The initial world of Pieria is a racist one, and one that needs to change. And the way Sutherland handled it was really fantastic. In this tiering system, RainWings are on the bottom. Sutherland manages to avoid the trope in kids' media where racism is portrayed as people just being assholes for no reason with no history. She also avoids writing the targets of racial discrimination as being literal monsters, which is a weirdly common thing in a lot of kids' media. What she does instead is give reasons that the tribe is misunderstood, despite the other tribes being fundamentally very similar. They're not valid reasons, there are no valid reasons for racism, but it makes sense why the other tribes would come to this conclusion. They have all sorts of negative biases about RainWings. They're weak, they're lazy, and they're stupid. All of these are not true, but there are reasons why other dragons would think that way. Unlike most of the tribes, RainWing culture emphasizes pacifism, so they don't like to attack other dragons unless absolutely necessary. They also culturally do not eat meat, so they're taught that it's disgusting to do so, which makes the other tribes think that they're weak. Biologically and culturally, they take naps in the middle of the day, so they can photosynthesize and mentally recharge. But since no other tribe does that, they think it's just RainWings being lazy and hating to work. And of course, RainWings can't read or write. They're all uneducated. Their formerly developed kingdom collapsed and lost all of their technology. And all of the biases are proven wrong by Glory, one of the primary characters. She's intelligent, clever, hardworking, confrontational, and terrifyingly deadly. And as we learn later in the series, she's not unique in this aspect. Now that we're done with one end of the spectrum, let's move on to the other. NightWings are a type of dragon with scales as black as the sky at midnight, and only a few white speckles like stars. They supposedly have the ability to read minds and tell the future, although none of the outsiders to NightWing society know if all of them do, or only some, or how powerful it is. In Book 4, we learn that, in fact, none of them actually have powers, and it's an ability that they've lost for a reason that goes unexplained until Book 6, when one of the only 2 NightWings with powers in the entire series gets introduced. Everything about NightWings reeks of decay and former glory. The entire kingdom is this tiny, dangerous, unhealthy volcano hiding under the smoke. None of them have any powers anymore. Most of them are starving half to death, with their only food being rotting meat once per week. Their queen, Battle Winner, lost a battle and was injured by an IceWing, and will now die if she ever leaves a tiny area of molten lava. Their only relevance is the fact that people think they're important, since NightWings wrote a huge portion of the scrolls and filled them with racial propaganda. When their volcano explodes, they're forced to move in with and bow down to the RainWings they saw as inferior and were going to colonize, and yet they still think that they're inherently superior to other dragons, and give all of their dragonettes these names that are supposed to sound menacing, intimidating, and majestic. It is above all pathetic. They are perfectly characterized, and it is so well done. It's such a good deconstruction of racial bias for kids, and how NightWings still think themselves superior despite being extremely weak and a shell of their former selves. And this bias doesn't just instantly disappear once everyone else figures out that this doesn't make sense. Some NightWings end up acclimating, but most are still stuck in their former beliefs, especially their older ones. And we know that it's a societal bias, not a biological one, because the two NightWings who were raised outside of the society, Starflight and Moon, don't share these opinions. They don't see themselves as being perfect or that others are beneath them, since they grew up around different types of dragons and there was nobody there to tell them that they were better. In fact, the NightWings thought that since Starflight was of superior breeding, he would be able to command the other dragonettes to do whatever he wanted. They were completely wrong, and the SeaWings Tsunami ended up being the headstrong leader, Starflight turning out to be the team's resident nerd. And when an enormous, powerful dragon named Darkstalker arrives and says he can return them to their former glory, most of them team up with him. Most are still so racially biased that they would follow somebody as murderous as him. Darkstalker leads many to dying a horrible death in an actual race war against the IceWings. It's pathetic and oddly tragic. SandWings are different shades of yellow to blend in with the desert sands, and have resistance to both heat and cold, since deserts are cold at night. They can breathe fire and have a scorpion-like stinger on the end of their tail, which delivers a deadly venom with only one antidote. This is how they hunt. The plot of the first 5 books is the War of SandWings Succession. Basically, their old, fairly benevolent queen, Oasis, gets killed by a couple of humans. Now, with 3 daughters who could possibly become queen, nobody's quite sure who should be the next one. Normally, the next queen is chosen with an artifact called the Eye of Onyx, but the humans who killed Oasis also stole that. On top of that, a bunch of SandWings don't actually believe that a couple of humans could have killed a goddamn dragon, not to mention such a big one who had so many guards with her, so they're all at each other's throats thinking that one of them must have actually done it. The 3 sisters are Blaze, Blister, and Burn, and each of them has gotten support from at least 2 tribes, turning this conflict into an all-out continent-scale war. Blaze is weak-willed, fairly unintelligent, and vain, and is the support of most of the SandWing citizens, as well as the IceWings because she offered their queen a whole bunch of land if she won. Blister is conniving and sinister, manipulating and backstabbing her way to the top. She is the support of the SeaWings, and secretly the NightWings, because once she was in control, she would help them colonize the Rainforest Kingdom and get some land. And Burn is a ruthless, evil warlord, who wants to strong-arm her way to the throne. She is the support of the SkyWings, since her war brings prizes for their cruel Queen Scarlet, and the MudWings, because she is threatened to attack them if they didn't join her. As of Book 1, there's a prophecy that a group of 5 dragonettes, a MudWing, a SeaWing, a SkyWing, a NightWing, and a SandWing will end this conflict, but is created by a NightWing without any powers who is just trying to make things go in his tribe's favor. So even though everybody believes the prophecy, it's not actually true. These 5 dragonettes are who the first 5 books center around. Now, while Blaze would absolutely be the best option, none of these candidates would be good, and none of them are concerned with the nation's biggest issue, the Scorpion Den. It's basically an enormous crime-filled slum surrounding an oasis. Within this place is a group called the Outclaws run by a dragon named Thorn, who controls the source of the water and allows a free daily meal to all the dragonettes. None of the candidates for the throne are addressing the problems within the Scorpion Den, and are either too bloodthirsty or too self-absorbed to care. So when the crew gets the Eye of Onyx back, it kills one of them and ends up choosing Thorn to be queen. This is some cool world building, since it tells us that 1, the stone can choose anybody to be queen, and 2, that the person who made the stone, Jerboa, didn't believe that royals necessarily had the right to rule, and that there could be great people out there who could do a better job. And it's true. Thorn ends up being a really great ruler. It also means that the current line of queens isn't some ancient line and doesn't have some sort of divine right to rule. They're just the descendants of a peasant who was elevated to the status of royalty for being a good leader. IceWings are pale, white, silver, or blue dragons who live in the northwestern area of Pieria. They have the ability to live in extremely cold temperatures and are immune to snow blindness, plus they can fire off a blast of cold from their mouths instead of fire. They have sharp, serrated claws for gripping ice, which are notably quite deadly. IceWings live in a particularly hierarchical society, with every single member being put into a caste system. There are 7 circles, with the first being the highest and reserved for nobility, and the 7th being the lowest for people who are supposed to be shunned by society and perform humiliating tasks. Dragonettes could rise or fall through these rankings by doing things like hunting, military training, or attending traditional ceremonies. Once they become adults, their rank is pretty much locked in place, and it determines the course of the rest of their lives. If they're in the top 2, they can live a life of a luxury in the palace. If they're at the bottom, they have to spend their whole lives scraping out a living at a remote military outpost. Since parents could be affected by the rank of their child, they often force them into acting a certain way and punish them if they perform poorly. There's also something called the Diamond Trial, which lets a bottom-ranked dragonette fight the top-ranked to death. Whoever wins gains the top rank. The entire kingdom is surrounded by a gigantic wall of ice, which is a funny coincidence considering the only other fantasy property I've covered on this channel is Game of Thrones. The wall shoots spears at anybody who isn't an IceWing, and the only way to avoid being fired at is to wear one of only 3 bracelets in the entire world. They're also known for being particularly racist. Practically everybody in the tribe has some degree of a superiority complex, with it getting worse the higher up in power they get. In particular, they're the only ones who genuinely dislike the NightWings, since the last person in their kingdom with genetic magic ended up running off with a NightWing. They see it as a conspiracy from the entire tribe to steal their IceWing magic away, and not as a single individual falling in love with another, which is what it was. So if it isn't clear already, the IceWings are incredibly, and I don't use this word lightly, fascist. They live in a hierarchical, isolationist society where individuality is suppressed in favor of service to the nation and family, and all the power is wielded by a handful of people at the very top, and their only motivation to interact with other tribes is to get land from the SandWings since they have a massive superiority complex that says they're perfect society, and all others except for maybe NightWings are inferior, but they still hate them anyway because they think that the entire goddamn society conspired against them to take away their magic. Oh, and also the entire goddamn kingdom is surrounded by a giant wall that tries to kill you if you're not of a particular ethnicity. Oh my god, it's so bad. They're so unbelievably obviously written to be an analogy for fascism. In fact, it's so bad that both plots that center around IceWing characters involve them trying their absolute hardest to destroy their current society. But all of this information is revealed to you gradually in the stories, and over the course of 2 separate books. You look at the kingdom from the outside and see a well-organized, well-defended kingdom who thinks ahead, but from the inside, it's obvious how oppressive and awful it is. Sutherland hooks you in by showing huge, beautiful palaces and incredible structures, before informing you that to make them, a huge portion of society lives miserable lives on the outskirts, barely surviving while having to work hard labor and being humiliated constantly. It's a weirdly subtle, yet very well-written critique about how oppressive and horrible the authoritarianism of fascism can be, and it's all hidden in a handful of paragraphs over the course of 2 books in a children's series. SkyWings are based mostly on traditional Western European dragons. They're red, orange, and yellow with a long, thin body and enormous wings. They're the fastest flyers out of any species, can withstand some cold since they have to fly so high up, and can breathe fire. This makes sense, since they live in the mountains of northern Pieria where prey can hide easily. They need to be really fast to catch them before they can hide in the trees or in a cave. There's also this thing where if SkyWings have twins, sometimes one will end up being born weak and small, without fire, while the other will be born with scales that are constantly at a ridiculous temperature, an ability that they can't turn off. Basically, one of them eats the other's fire while they're in the egg. One of the characters in the books is born with this ability, and it's pretty cool since it means they can't touch anything without the risk of melting it. To protect the power of the tribe, the nation will throw the weak, fireless ones off of a cliff before they can fly, 300 style. They also do the same thing with the ones with the fire scales, although presumably they have to hold them with tongs so they don't burn their hands off. The society is fairly warring, but normally a lot less isolationist and regimented than the IceWings. They're able to express themselves through the arts, like music, dance, organized sports, and all sorts of other things. They're generally more open to new ideas than the other tribes, and were even historically named the Friendly Tribe, although this has gotten a lot more sarcastic by the time of the current books. Aside from their horrible Queen Scarlet, they've got one of the better societies in the books, and once they get rid of her, things start to get a whole lot better. You know, aside from the whole baby murder thing, that's pretty awful. Now that we're done with all the tribes, it's time to move on to the sorcerers of the story, Animi. Animus dragons are the only magic users in the story, and are extremely rare. There's usually only 1 or 2 per generation, and they are ridiculously powerful. All the user has to do is speak words aloud while touching something, and they'll enchant it with any effect they want. And I mean anything. Throughout the story, Animus magic is used to move objects, locate stuff, make a robot out of a stone statue, duplicate objects, duplicate people, delete things from existence, hypnotize people, transform people's bodies, cause hundreds of people to all simultaneously read each other's minds, let people who wear a specific necklace visit the dreams of other creatures, create more animi by giving them magic too, cause a dragon to be stuck in an eternal time loop by forcing them to be brought back to life any time of the day and also be trapped in a single room in eternal torture of them being brought back to life only to be instantly killed, and to create a hole that generates infinite seals. The only real limit is that it can't bring people back from the dead once they've been killed. They seem super overpowered. They can basically enchant things with wishes as much as they want, but they have a very interesting drawback. Using their magic too much makes them go crazy. But animi are rare and not all of them end up affected, so it's unclear how it works. And here's where Sutherland can use one of her greatest world-building strengths, ambiguity. Since animi are so rare, nobody's quite sure how many enchantments it takes or how strong the enchantments have to be to make someone go crazy. So the characters, and you, the reader, are constantly on edge, wondering if it's going to be the next one that makes the Animus go off the deep end. It even starts happening to one of the more beloved characters, and everyone has to desperately hope that they don't go down a dark path, or things are going to get really bad. It's also strongly implied that it's not something inherent to the magic, it's just the people going mad with power. One Animus named Darkstalker explicitly enchanted something to make sure he could never go crazy from Animus magic, and he still ended up being murderous and evil regardless. It seems like if you use the magic for selfish gain, you end up going crazy, not from the magic itself, but from the power it gives you. The most recent example is when a royal SeaWing named Albatross went nuts and almost killed his entire family, and could only be stopped by another Animus. So people with magic are highly incentivized to not use it very much, because they know that if they do, they could become almost unstoppably deadly and murderous in a quest for infinite power. The magic is also somewhat a double-edged sword. Darkstalker repeatedly tries to outsmart it, making himself immortal, making himself invulnerable, making himself immune to going crazy, and it doesn't work. He gives his powers to a scroll, and is then trapped underneath a mountain without the scroll, causing him to suffer for hundreds of years with absolutely nothing to do except read minds. And this means that the societies with animi have to operate differently. In the SeaWings, they have a yearly ceremony where every child is tested to make sure if they have any abilities. If they do, they're raised in a very special way. The IceWings made sure their animi only ever enchanted a single thing, so that they would never go mad, and spent their entire life up to that point thinking about what that enchantment would be. One wished for the gigantic wall that fires spears. But naturally, sometimes they broke these rules, which led to a whole host of other issues in their history. The IceWings also made sure that they would have a lot of animi and that they could control them by making sure that they bred into the royal family. Again, really fascist. And SkyWings just straight up killed their animi before they got too old, since they thought they were too dangerous to be left alive. So it works! Despite being unbelievably ungodly powerful, there are either moral limitations on the characters, or there's some other reason why they can't use their power. Either it's removed, they fear they're going to go crazy, they're being controlled by a greater society that they have attachment to, etc. Also, nobody is sure how animi even happen. It's something to do with your bloodline, but there's also some stuff there about it being caused by 3 full moons, which was kind of confirmed by Darkstalker being born under 3 full moons, and the only Animus we see where they were not confirmed to be born on a full moon night were Turtle and Anemone was created by Turtle, so we're not sure, whatever. Animus magic is so interesting because it manages to be a magic system that is simultaneously extremely rare, powerful, limited, and relevant at the same time. Even though there are canonically only 5 living animi over the course of all 15 books, Animus touched objects show up a bunch of times throughout the story, and tend to stick around. The magic is probably the weakest element of the world building, but it's still really, really good, managing to be open to almost endless creativity on the part of the characters and readers, yet with enough limits in place to give the story stakes and prevent it from being the do anything button. Wings of Fire's world building is easily the best I've ever seen out of any children's series I've ever read, and I'm still only scratching the surface. I didn't cover any of the stuff exclusive to the last 5 books, or anything involving how human society works, or any of the character arcs and how their actions realistically affect the world, and how, unlike in some stories, it doesn't feel like the protagonists and villains are the only ones with agency. Again, if you want to see that, like this video, subscribe, share it with a friend, all the stuff. But even if it was just a taste, I hope I showed you how good the world building in this series is, and how each society is written to be completely different, based on their histories and cultures, and how they interact with each other. With all that said, if you hated the video, smash that dislike button and leave a comment telling me how I can improve. If you loved it, this video is long enough already, so thank you, goodbye, and I'll see you sometime in the future.